Hi everyone, and welcome to Kingdom Breakthrough. This is another short video on the topic of unchanging faith. And our faith is unchanging because our faith is in a God who doesn't change. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And as we look forward, as we look back, as we think about God's revelation of himself to us in the here and now, we can take real confidence in that the God that we've trusted in the past, the God that we walk with today, will also be the God that we walk with tomorrow and in all the days to come. And of course, we live in such uncertain times here in the UK. We're just having a change of Prime Minister. We have the whole economic situation, rising cost of living, fuel, petrol, diesel, gasoline for those of you in the States. We have all these challenges, COVID related, work related, home related, family related, church related. And in all of that, we need to know that God is still the same. And the thing I want to look at today, just very briefly, is this reality that God's okay with our questions. You know, sometimes we think that it's impertinent to bring a question to God, or impertinent to bring a question to a leader. You know, it's only insecure leaders, church leaders and others, who are unhappy with questions. Because if they are really wanting the best for us as followers, they will understand that for us to ask questions means that we're still thinking. If we're still thinking, we can be learning. If we're learning, we can be growing in discipleship, in spiritual formation. So if you're a leader, welcome genuine questions. Welcome people's battle to try to get their heads around all that they're facing in the here and now. As they try to understand scripture, as they try to understand who God is. You know, where is God in all of this muddle? Where is God in the challenges that I face day by day? These are real issues that people face. And as leaders, we want to be open to supporting people on their journey of discovery. And so often the journey of discovery is more important than the destination. I've talked about this before in this little video series, that we're so destination focused, we're so solution driven. And I understand that, and in some ways that is a necessary thing. But we miss sometimes what we can learn on the journey, what we can learn on the way to getting to that place where we feel we have some sort of resolution, if not a satisfying answer. And are you okay with a resolution that isn't a satisfying answer? In theory, of course, we'd all say yes to that, but in practice, it's much, much harder. So I want to encourage you to be open to some of those things. Some of the things you might be wrestling with today. You may be in a health situation and you thought it had been resolved, but things have come back, or it's become harder than it was. It may be a family situation where you thought things would work out in a certain way and they haven't, and there's that sadness there. It could be that with church, you feel that church has just gone completely pear-shaped and you don't know what it is anymore. You know, what is church when it's working? And in most of us, you know, for different times in our lives, we're thinking, well, what is church when it's not working? Which is also our current experience. How do we deal with that? What about God? Who's God in all that is happening? How can we bring our everyday mundane things to him? How can we see a God who's so above be interested in each of us? You know, today, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, Boris Johnson's just given his last speech as Prime Minister in Downing Street before heading up to Scotland to tender his resignation. And the criticism of his speech, not surprisingly from the Labour Party, was that he's completely out of touch with the reality of everyday people. He's very wealthy. He doesn't really have the challenges that many of us face day by day. Arguably, he has challenges that most of us don't have day by day. But whatever your political persuasion, one of the great criticisms of those in authority, whether they're royalty or elected politicians, is that they are so removed from all of us normal people that they cannot possibly relate. And the question then arises, well, if that's the case, and I'm sure there's truth in that, what about God? When I was doing some research some years ago, I came across these terms, transcendence and immanence, and that God is immanent, IMMANENT. He is involved in the present. He has chosen to make himself available. here and now. But he's also transcendent. He's above and beyond everything else. He is far removed from it all. How do we hold these two things together? They're seeming opposites. How do we give our lives to God and say, God, I'm going to trust you, even though you are so big, you are so other than what I can possibly experience? I've been thinking a lot about this idea recently of God being so removed from who we are as his created beings. And yet he has chosen to, I think it was Eugene Peterson in his paraphrase, to move into the neighborhood with Jesus so that he relates to us in the here and now. So we have this away and close sort of situation, holding these things together in fruitful tension. We have this question of God is above and beyond, and yet he's so interested. He is completely other, and yet he is completely present. And these questions people have wrestled through for thousands of years, and it's not unreasonable that we wrestle through them too. And we learn from those who have gone before us. People say to me sometimes, I don't need these books of Christian living. I just need the Bible. I don't need to read what anybody else has written. I just go straight to Scripture. I go straight to God. And I get that, and I understand the heart behind that, to go to the source. And that must be the first place that we go. And yet, underlying this supposedly spiritual perspective on it all, I think there's actually an underlying arrogance that we can't learn from others who have gone before us. It's as if God has just started to work in 2022. Well, of course, God's been working for thousands of years. He's been dealing with people's problems and issues, real life challenges for thousands of years. God has been revealing himself little by little to people through the millennia. And we can learn from their wisdom if we have the humility to say, there's something that I can take on board for me here and now based on someone else's experience of God. And of course, we often do that anyway. We listen to someone's talk, perhaps on a Sunday morning in a church service, and we hear their testimony of how God has met with them during the week. And we realize, actually, I can learn something from that and take that on board for myself. So have the humility to realize that you don't have all the answers. And that even when you are sincere about something, you could be, as I've often said in the past, I have been very sincere about many things, and sometimes I was sincerely mistaken. I was sincerely wrong. And it's okay to be wrong, to learn from our mistakes and to move forward. It's okay to ask God questions. God, where are you in all of this? Like the psalmist, how long, oh Lord? How long is it going to go on for? When can I expect some relief? How can I possibly get through this into the next season? Because right now it seems that this season of testing is lasting forever. Ask God those questions. Ask other Christians that you trust those questions. And if people come to you and they ask you these questions and you think in your head, I have no idea. Open your mouth and let that come out and say to them, I have no idea. Be honest about it. I remember asking questions of people over the years, and it was quite obvious they didn't know the answer, but they spouted forth all sorts of things that sounded good. And I've done the same. Let's be honest and say, look, I don't know. There's a mystery to this. Part of walking with God is dealing with the mystery. Part of working with folk in terms of praying for healing is dealing with the mystery, where sometimes we see people get healed and sometimes we don't. How do we get our heads around that? We have to leave it with God. And that's not some massive cop-out, but that's actually us saying there's an element of this that I do not understand, that in all probability I will never understand. Nevertheless, I trust God. Nevertheless, I'm going to hang in there. Nevertheless, I'm going to keep on going, trusting him, because God has always been faithful, and I am confident that he'll be faithful as I go forward. So bring your questions to God. Bring your questions to other Christians that you trust. Bring your questions to Scripture and say, God, as I look into this passage of the Bible, will you answer the questions that I've got? Frankly, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me at the moment. I'm trying to describe the indescribable. Just reading recently in Revelation and also in Ezekiel, where these guys, John, whichever John it was who wrote Revelation, and Ezekiel in the Old Testament, are trying to describe these visions that they see. and their words are inadequate. They have so many questions. And sometimes we don't find the answers, but we find someone who will walk with us through those questions. And that person is Jesus. So bring your questions to him. And know ultimately, God is less interested in us having answers to all the queries we have, and he's much more interested in walking in relationship with us. So be blessed this week. Ask God the questions and look to him for the journey of a lifetime. Be blessed.